One mistake that I see first time home buyers make all the time is they don't know what they don't know. And that especially is true when it comes to making an offer. Of course, you see a house that you love, you're ready to make an offer, but you haven't asked the right questions yet. As a former teacher, this is what I specialize in doing is helping first-time home buyers with asking the right questions to make sure that they are comfortable with the decision that they're about to make before they actually make that offer. So in this video, I'm going to talk about some questions that you want to consider asking, whether it's asking to the seller, asking your agent, maybe even asking yourself before you make that first offer. One very typical question you might want to consider asking is, why is the seller moving? Now, you may not actually find the answer to that. Your agent is going to ask the other agent these questions. This is not something where we ever tell you that you should reach out to the seller on your own because that's not your place. That's why you have an agent. That's why they have an agent. So your agent can ask, may not get a straight answer, why is the seller moving? Why would that be important to you? Well, it gives the motivation that the seller has with the house that they're trying to sell. If potentially they're in a desperate situation, well, then maybe that offers you an opportunity to make an offer that's maybe a bit more negotiable. If they really have to move for a job or they have to relocate because of family or whatever, and they're moving a pretty good distance away, well, maybe you have a chance to get that house at a lower price. Another question you might consider asking is, were there any recent repairs? Now, hopefully you've done the house walkthrough and your agent is able to point out some things that may or may not have been fixed while you were there through the walkthrough. And after that initial or maybe secondary visit, there could be some questions that your agent is going to ask the other agent about repairs. Why is there a mark on the ceiling that clearly shows that they had to fix some drywall up there and they repainted it? Did they have a leak upstairs? Why does it look like there are some new shingles on the roof? Did they have an issue with roofing, whether it's in the attic or potentially a water leak? Those are the kind of things that hopefully your agent has picked up on and maybe you picked up on, and you're going to throw those questions at your agent to ask the other agent. Now, this question you may already know before you even step in that house because sometimes a seller and their agent have already released the information about utilities. It helps to ask for the average cost of utilities because when you go to buy a house, you're not just paying your monthly mortgage. You're going to have to pay for electric, potentially gas, water bill, sewer and utility bills, maybe the cable. Those kind of things should be important to you so that you know an idea of what your monthly expenses are going to be on top of what your mortgage payment is going to be every month. Now, along with figuring out the cost for the house, there is potentially an HOA. So question number one here is going to be, is there an HOA? And if there is, what is the monthly cost for it? And then along with that, you may want to ask or should ask for what the covenants are for that particular HOA. I had a situation where I had a buyer who was under contract to buy a house. They were then given the HOA covenants, and in reading through that, they discovered that they could not have a home-based business that was going to be a problem for them because they ran a woodworking business out of their garage. That's loud, and that's going to bother the neighbors, and it's right there in the covenants that they can't have that. So we ultimately had to back out of that deal. And it was fine. Everybody was able to walk away because it is in the purchase agreement. But it's important to read through the covenants because you want to know, okay, I have a pet and I want to put up a fence in the backyard. Oh, but the HOA says you can't have a fence or a certain kind of fence. That could be a problem for you. So it's not just about cost, though that is super important. It's also about what rules and restrictions there might be from that HOA. Now, this is probably a question for your agent, and you may or may not get this from the other agent, but are there any expected repairs upcoming? Now, this should be probably after you have the inspection on the house, and it's going to give you an idea of the age and condition of the roof, the foundation, the HVAC system, potentially the plumbing or the appliances. So knowing that information can help you make a decision on whether or not in the near future or potentially the far off future you're going to have to make repairs and replacements to this house. And all of those, as the new homeowner, are going to cost you money. So Potentially, these could be things that you wind up asking the seller for before closing. Maybe they're going to pay to put on a new roof or update the HVAC or just clean out the HVAC system and get it serviced. Now, this question may be your due diligence. What's the neighborhood like at night? So you went to see the house potentially during the day, potentially in the evening, but it was sunny outside. But you may want to know what's the neighborhood like at night? What's the vibe there? Is there a lot of traffic in and out of the neighborhood? So is it going to be loud? If there are any train tracks nearby, whether it's right behind the house, maybe it's in the neighborhood somewhere else, maybe it's just even a mile or so or less than a mile away, but you can hear that train and how many times a day that train goes by. All of these things factor in, as well as the vibe of the neighborhood. Do yourself a favor. Go drive through the neighborhood at night, in the evening, when it's dark. See what's going on. Are there a lot of kids out and about playing or being raucous? Are the neighbors loud? Is there people who like to play loud music at night, or somebody's practicing their band instruments in the garage, or who knows? These are all things that affect your way of life once you wind up living there. A good question is there any construction planned nearby? Now, this is probably a question that you should know going in because realistically, if the seller knows that there is construction happening nearby, especially to the street right out front or nearby in the neighborhood, they're supposed to reveal that information to potential buyers. So hopefully you know that in advance, but maybe it's nearby in terms of neighborhood next door or a couple streets over or whatever. Anything like that can affect the property value of the home you want to purchase. So it would be a good question to see if there's just anything happening nearby. A couple of really good questions have to do with the age of things on the house. Now, potentially the seller doesn't know this information. If they weren't the ones who built it, they may not know for sure. But the question of how old is the roof? How old is the HVAC? Potentially how old are the appliances, the water heater, the AC unit that might be outside? Things like that could potentially mean future costs for you in a hurry, or potentially, they just got a new roof in the last year or two and they're still, 15 to 18 years away from needing a new one of those. A lot of those things can factor into the cost and potentially into the offer that you write. If it needs a new roof, you may ask for them to replace it before you get there. Are there any factors that could affect financing or insurance, such as is the home in a floodplain? Because that may require that your insurance tells you have to have flood insurance, which is going to cost you more money. If you have an FHA or a VA loan, conventional should be this way too, but not always as stringent as FHA and VA. Are there things on the house such as peeling paint, missing a hand railing, certain things about the house that just aren't quite up to par in terms of condition? Sometimes government loans are a little bit more picky when it comes to those things, and they may have to be addressed by somebody before you could actually buy the house. And finally, what's included with the purchase? Once again, hopefully you already know this because when you see the listing on the house, it's going to list on there what appliances should be included with the sale. However, maybe there's a pool table in the basement or a hot tub on the back porch. Are those things included? Do you want them included? Because you might not. Just because they're with the house doesn't mean you want them to stay, or maybe you do. But those kind of things can factor into the final cost or future cost. If you're the one who has to get rid of those things, well, that's going to cost you money. Buying your first home isn't just about falling in love with the house. It's not just about the backyard or the kitchen or the vibe you feel in the house. It's about asking important questions. And when it comes to asking important questions, well, first-time home buyers, they either don't know what to ask or they just tend to miss those things. As a realtor, former teacher, that is literally what I'm here to do on a daily basis. This is the kind of thing that I deal with in helping people buy their first house. If you found this video helpful, do me a favor and drop me a like or leave me a comment. And if I can be of any service to you here in the Indianapolis area, by all means, drop me a comment or send me a message. You'll see it down in the show notes. Good luck on your home search. Make sure you ask the right questions. Thanks for watching.